Just puts it anywhere. It's good to have. We're going to do something that I titled "Behold What's Obvious," and what we want to share with you at home via television. And the question would be: is there an actual touch or an intelligence beyond what we can sense and feel? And if so, why is it hidden? In other words, basically what we get into is a question of the existence of a thing called God, the existence of a thing called spirit, and then try to prove if there is an intelligence beyond that we can sense and we can feel. Now, science shows us that the universe works in an exact law, yet science itself is unable to identify the origin of that law. What is, in other words, what is the source? What is the origin of the law? What is the origin of life, say? We have a book that speaks of others' experiences. The Bible is filled with experiences of other people or of other writers. We have testimonies of people that say this happened and that happened. We have all kinds of things from people, but, there's not one person in all of the millions of years of the existence of the universe who's been able to prove spiritual existence. We can't prove it. There's no one who can prove without a shadow of a doubt spiritual existence. So in spite of all our prayers, in spite of all our religions, in spite of all our testimonies, no one is absolutely 100% sure. And it's impossible to be. But there are things we can be sure of. And possibly by turning our back on the obvious, we, in essence, have turned our back on what we've been seeking for. In other words, we've been looking for something, but by turning our back on what's obvious, then maybe we have somehow caused ourselves to turn our back on the exact thing we're looking for. The Apostle Paul seems to agree with that. And I would ask you, it's on page 919 in your little Bibles, it's on Romans chapter 1. Romans chapter 1. And verse 18. And Paul makes an interesting comment on exactly what we're talking about tonight. He says in verse 18 in Romans chapter 1, "For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who hold the truth in unrighteousness. Now, because that which may be known is manifest in them." So here he specifically says, that which may be known of God is manifest inside of a person. That which is manifest inside of a person actually is what, according to the Apostle Paul, that thing that we call God. Look what else it says. "For the invisible things," this is in verse 20, "the invisible things of Him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even His eternal power." So then what Paul is saying is that the invisible things, those things that we say we have to have faith in, are demonstrated by things that are made, those things that are visible. Things that are made are physical. So then there's a statement in the Bible that if we know what we're looking at and we know how to interpret nature, we'll be able to see the truth of that which is invisible, which is quite a statement, and it's quite an interesting concept if you think about it and get into your mind and say, well, wait a minute, here's somebody in the Bible who's one of the prolific writers of the Bible saying that this thing that we call God manifests inside of people. We already knew that. But in addition to that, he's saying that the things that are made that are physical demonstrate the things that are spiritual and are invisible. So that's what's said. We are spending the time in a spiritual quest looking for the invisible and neglecting that which is visible. We're looking for the unseen and say, well, we've accomplished something religious or spiritual, but by looking at it, we're totally overlooking or missing that which is visible. For instance, how does an animal which knows nothing of the birth process know exactly what to do at the time of birthing? That is called instinct. Okay. And there's a perfect example. If an animal that knows nothing about the birthing process can actually give birth and know exactly what to do, then you'd have to say that built into that animal is an intelligence where there comes a pattern of instruction which is to be available when needed. Who put the instruction inside of the animal? This thing that we call instinct, we never stop to stop and say what that word really is. It's instruction. It is instruction. Stop using the word instinct for just a minute and say it's instruction. So there's something that is built into the animal's being that is able to instruct it as to what to do at the time when instruction is needed. Okay? So that's proof of the existence of an intelligence. And that's why Paul was trying to tell us. He says, people are trying to have faith that some kind of a God exists, constantly trying to see that which is invisible and missing that which is visible. And one of the most prolific visible things that we have is this thing called instinct, which is instruction. Animals that do not have the capacity to understand are still able to do what is necessary when they have to. Okay. The most obvious creation of intelligence then, basically even probably more so than looking at instinct, the most obvious basis of intelligence that we can watch and see results from the zodiac. The zodiac. The stars in the sky. There on the first page of the Bible, before you get anywhere else, on the very first page of the Bible is an instruction for each one of us, and it talks about the stars, and it says, let them be for signs. There's an instruction. If you want to call it from God, you want to call it spiritual instruction, whatever you want to say. It says, let them be for signs. Let the stars be for signs. In other words, there is something there. In the same way that instruction is put into the being of an animal so the animal knows what to do when necessary, it says in the Bible that the stars also are to be used as signs so that we will be able to know what to do at a point when it's necessary. There are instructions contained in the stars that is given to us so that we were able to move in a way that we have to when the need arises. Just as the different months of the earth bring forth different lifestyles, the different ages of the zodiac have brought forth different lifestyles on the earth. Okay? But deliberately we turn our back on anything that could be relative to the cosmos. Religion is extremely frightened of this, extremely frightened of it, and so it turns its back. Well, that would be okay if the religious leaders just turned their back, but what happens is when the religious leaders turn their back, all of the people that follow them turn their back at the same time, because religious people don't think as an individual, they think as a mob. If the church says turn your back, they turn their back, just like a machine. So they turn their back on this, and then when you do that, you turn your back on a statement that Jesus made in Luke chapter 22, verse 10, where he said, when you see the man with the pitcher of water, enter into the house and go to the upper room. That's a statement that Jesus made. They were asking Jesus, where will we have the Passover? He says, when you see the man with the pitcher of water. Now we were, just before this particular program come on, the program you watched a moment ago before this talked about Passover. Passover. And what's being talked about? When you see the man with the pitcher of water. This is one of the most magnificent Passovers that you could ever see. You've been alive Passover after Passover after Passover, but you never really understood that over the last few years you're taking part in that which is the Passover of Pisces to Aquarius, which identifies the man with the pitcher of water right there. That's the Passover. The cosmic Passover of the movement from Pisces to Aquarius is the most magnificent and universal Passover anyone could ever see. And you've never heard a minister even consider such a thing like this. There is nothing in the universe that's more important than this. There is nothing in the universe that will change the affairs of man. There is nothing in the universe that will change the affairs of all life than the Passover from Pisces to Aquarius, and it is systematically ignored by religion. They never even brought the question up. And when Jesus was talking, we will get religious people, Christians, to admit that Jesus speaks a universal language. Jesus has spoken to the universe. There is only one universal man with a pitcher of water, Aquarius. There is no other universal man with a pitcher of water. It's Aquarius. Okay? And when Aquarius then starts to take its shape, amazing things happen. When you put two and two together, if indeed this is the coming of Christ, the Aquarian age, the Aquarian gospel, and then you look at all of the amazing things that are happening in the universe, all the amazing discoveries that are happening, all of this new age mentality, the holistic medicine, and all of these types of things, you would say maybe it's time to pause and see if there's any fact or any validity in this. Religious people, Christian people, won't even consider it. Remember we were talking a little while ago in the program that you saw before this one, when it came to choosing between the biblically condoned holiday or holy day of Passover and the one that was made up by the Church of Easter, we all followed and we said, okay, we'll take Easter. Nobody even questioned it. Nobody questioned, where are you getting Easter from? Nobody asked anything. It's not in the Bible. Who made this up? Where did it come from? No, you just said, okay, happy Easter. And so we all came and we took part in it. We all shared in it. And here's the point here where the Christ speaks of a prophecy that has to do with an age, which is the age that you're living in right now. And he says, this is the age when things will happen. This is the age when the Passover will take place. Certainly it's the age when the Passover will take place. We'll move from the time of the fish to the time of the waterman. Okay. But religion doesn't even acknowledge the possibility of that prophecy. Instead, it's just a man walking down the street with a bucket of water in his hand. And there's nothing more to it than that, nothing more considered to it than that. Okay. So, what is obvious? There is an actual age of Aquarius. That's obvious. There is a universal man with a pitcher of water. That's obvious. And that's Aquarius, okay? And if Jesus was speaking of the age of Aquarius in Luke 22:10, then you should understand something. It is here, it is now, and you can experience it, and you can be part of it. If you want to say, okay, I don't believe it, you can erase it, but you just probably have erased the most magnificent cosmic universal thing in your life or in the lives of the planet, of the people that live on this planet Earth. What is Aquarius? Aquarius is a time when it's dawning, according to those who know of these types of things, finds people preoccupied with rational science. That always kind of happens at the beginning of an age such as this. Science and technology consume everything at the beginning of the age. But then the man with the pitcher of water, who in essence is shown kneeling on one knee, the water flowing out from the pitcher in front of him, is shown in the ancient Zohar and the Jewish writings of the Sefer Yetzirah of Kabbalah, follows the prophecy of an Aquarian Jesus very closely. Aquarius, they say, holds the element of oneness. That's a very, very important thing. An element of sharing and an element of oneness. That's what you're seeing happening all over the world. In spite of the chaos, because as Jesus says, the movement into this is like a woman with birth pains. Before it happens, there is always chaos and chaotic things. In spite of the chaos, there is a movement of oneness through nations and people all over the world. Okay? That's why you see this United Nations involved in the different aspects of, we'll not fight unless the United Nations is going to... There's a coming together of cultures, and there's a coming together of nationalities all over the world. And that's what the ancient Kabbalah says. There is a oneness. That's what Aquarius does. That's why you find yourself what they call holistic medicine. It's a oneness. All of these things, everything is tied into the other. Everything is part of the other. Sharing consciousness, the understanding of the oneness of all mankind, the understanding of the oneness of thought energy through brainwaves. All of these things are talking about finding the fulfillment of the prophecy of Jesus Christ, who talked about Aquarius. Okay? You see, when I said in the beginning of this thing, we're going to talk about behold what's obvious. It would seem to me that if I had a Bible, and even if I had a slight understanding of the things of the universe, the things of life, and I saw Jesus saying, when you see the man with the pitcher of water, and I understood that the Jesus or the Christ was the universal voice, and I understand that there was only one universal man with a pitcher of water, which was Aquarius, I would start to at least think of the relevancy of this and the possibilities. Once I started thinking of the relevancy of Aquarius and the possibilities, then I would take myself to the prophecies of others, such as out of the Kabbalah, who talk about the Aquarian age and the things that would happen. You have spirituality. You have a change of thought patterns. You have an abandoning kind of the competitive society and a movement of people within themselves. And then I would say, here we have arrived at the prophecy of Christ. We have a fulfillment of a prophecy of Christ right in our midst, and we don't even see it. And so then I can take myself right back to the part where we started this a few minutes ago, where the Apostle Paul said, the invisible things are seen clearly by those things which are made. Those things which are physical, visible things. Aquarius is a visible, physical thing as far as the constellations are concerned, and we pay no attention to it. Yet that's the key. See, it was like what we were talking about in the tape just a moment ago. Here you have the most amazing thing in the world, which is Passover, because now we're talking about the Passover cosmically from Pisces to Aquarius, the Passover on earth from winter to spring, the Passover in the mind from the left side to the right side. And what do we do? This is it. Technically, electrically, cosmically, universally, naturally, this is it. Now we understand what it's about. New age, passing from one to the other. New life, passing from one season to another. New persons passing from one aspect of the mind to the other. We understand the Passover. What did we do? We ripped it apart, we erased it, and we replaced it with an ancient holiday which celebrates bunnies, eggs, and sex called Easter. And we missed the whole thing. See? Because we didn't behold what was obvious. We didn't behold the fact that the ancient scriptures were telling us of a cosmic energy that is at work as a force in the universe and that we have to plug into. Aquarius is a real aspect. It's a change. It's one of the 12 seasons of the universe. There are 12 seasons in the universe, 2,600 years each, in the same way that there are 12 months of the year, 30 days each. And we are moving out of that which is the month of March into the month of April when this is being taped. We're moving into the spring. We're moving out of the Pisces into the age of Aquarius. It is the Sunday. It is the summer of the soul. It is the time of new thought patterns. And you know, it is amazing to me how religion is so glued into its tradition. And nobody ever questions it. Would you please walk in and say, where did you get this from? Where did you get the authority to celebrate Easter? Easter is a traditional church holiday. It has no basis in any religion other than the ancient Babylonian religions of Ishtar and Tammuz, which is condemned in Ezekiel 8 in the Bible. That's what we chose as this day. Where did it come from? Nobody questions it. And that's the scary part. Nobody questions it. So, yes. Now that's all right. Good. Come on up here for a minute. Come on.
Meant by the Hebrews the way you're discussing it now?
Kabbalah.
The Kabbalah,
Yeah,
okay.
Kabbalah.
Okay.
Let me tell you, that's a good question. Is Passover meant by the Hebrews the way we're discussing it now? It's exactly why Passover is placed on the 14th day of Nisan, March, April, because there's a Passover of one season to the other. Otherwise, it would have been put at any day. It was specifically made at that time. But let's look at its origin, and because you raised a very interesting question that demands that we stop for just a minute and say, what is it all about? It's about a time when the people of Israel come out of the bondage of where they were confined into slavery and then move into the promised land. Okay? Now the point is this. If we look into metaphysics, the science of metaphysics, and the terminologies involved here, you have that which is Egypt, and Egypt in metaphysics means bondage. Okay? Are people, the people of Israel, that those people who have the spirit and the mind together with God are in bondage. Now, in order that they will be able to escape bondage, they will have to stay in their house. Very, very important. Stay in their house, and stay in the house means to stay within yourself. That's why Jesus says, when you see the man with the pitcher of water, enter into the house and go to the upper room. So you have to stay in the house, okay? And in that house, you take that which is the lamb, and you take that which is the blood of the lamb, you place it on the doorpost of the house, and you have no bread with leaven in it, nothing to rise, okay? So you have unleavened bread, and then you have that which is the lamb, the blood of the lamb. Okay, and all of these are characteristics of universal things. That which is the unleavened bread, there is no putrefaction. That, when it says take unleavened bread, my friends, is exactly the same as Jesus saying take no thought. Allow nothing within you that will spoil. Allow nothing within you that could putrefy. So clean it all out and take only that which is unleavened. Have nothing added. See, don't add any of your own thoughts. That's exactly what's being said here. This lamb is that which is the pineal gland of the brain. Okay, you touch the pinial, you place that on the doorpost, which is the entrance. Remember what it says in the Bible when you pray, enter the closet and close the door. This is the doorpost, the pineal gland of the brain. This is no thought. You stay in the house which is inside of yourself, and then what happens? The angel of death, that which separates you from God, passes over and you're saved. At that point, the firstborn of the Egyptians is slain. All right? And the firstborn of the Egyptians means that which comes out of the lower mind. The first thoughts which come out of the lower mind of the firstborn of the Egyptians. You have to understand something. And it's very important you understand it. There's no record, there's no historical evidence that this ever happened. Absolutely none. There is no group on the face of the world that kept records better than the Egyptians, and there's no record of this. There's no record of 4,000, 40,000, or 400,000 people running out of Egypt with a bunch of pharaohs chasing. But here we get to the point. As you go into this, you don't allow anything that to stain the inner part, the unleavened. You place that blood on the doorpost, which is the lamb, which is the pineal. Now you make your way through meditation across the wilderness. Through the wildernesses of meditation, you come to the Red Sea, which is your emotional nature. It is churning, and it is about to force you back into the bondage from whence you came. But at that point, you look up, which is into the higher reaches of the mind, and a way is made across the Red Sea. You can cross over to the Promised Land, which is the right hemisphere of the brain. The reason, and there's another very important part about the opening of the Red Sea, and the very important part about the opening of the Red Sea is that it is blown back by a strong east wind. It is the spirit that comes from the right side, the spirit that comes from the east. So basically, if you take the question that you asked, fundamentalists in the Jewish religion, it's all literal. In the same way the fundamentalists in the Christian religion, it's all literal. Jesus was crucified to appease God's wrath. Well, there we have the continuation of human sacrifice, and we wouldn't even get into that because we did that. But here you have two aspects of Christianity. You have that which is the mystical Christian, I guess you could say that was here, and you have that which is the fundamentalists, who everything is literal. In the Jewish religion, you have the fundamentalists, everything is literal, and then you have the Kabbalah, in which this here is the reason for all of these things haven't taken place. In the Muslim religion, you have the fundamentalists, and then you have the Sufi. And all of these religions, you have that. And it's up to the person to try to say, okay, I believe this literally happened, or this has a purpose. There's a reason for this. And what I tried to do is give you the metaphysical description of what this purpose is. And now if this makes sense to you that you must stay within yourself, you must not allow any thoughts to dirty your consciousness, you must touch that land which is the pineal gland, come across the wilderness of meditation, and even when your emotions try to drive you back, you must continue to look higher and higher until the sea parts and you go over into the Promised Land of the right hemisphere of the brain. This way then, you've got an understanding for this wild and bizarre story that is nowhere listed in any recorded part of history. The only place it's in is in the Old Testament. And so when we look at these things, and then we bring this Passover up to the point of Jeshua, Jesus, he turns around, he identifies the place where the kingdom of God is in Luke 17:21, says the kingdom of God is within you, and then makes the statement, I will no longer share this Passover until it is fulfilled in the kingdom of God. Saying that which is the Christ will no longer sit and sup with you until this fulfillment takes place at the time that you pass over from the left to the right side. When you pass over from the carnal to the divine mind, then you will find the Christ, and then he will share again the Passover supper with you. It's like the bread and wine. But it's a really good question, and I like questions because they open me up into other things that I hadn't thought about talking about. But it's a real good point, and it goes right back. Mustafa said, not necessarily fundamentalism. Fundamentalism is not bad, it's literalism. It's a question of literalism as opposed to, spiritualism. So in looking at that story, to me, I try to investigate things and check things out and make sure before I speak. And if I see something like this and there's no historical record that this happened, it makes me have a lot of problems with it. And the second thing is, I do not see any God. If this is the same God that's killing the firstborn of these people, in order to let these people loose. Then he's going to turn around and do all of these things to women, and then he's going to turn around and crucify this young guy. Then just go out and have a good time and forget about it. But that's not the way it is. This is all mystical, it's all metaphysical, it's all allegorical. And it's the age-old story of escaping from oneself and escaping from the bondage that is said about us, okay? So anyhow, when we come back then to the point where I was a little bit ago, we're talking about this time when we reach Aquarius now. And now we are seeing, you see, here you have, and once again, to dwell for a minute on your question, here you have the Passover. Watch what happens. See, everything is like this. I mean, in the universe, everything is like that. Whether it be a circle, whether it be ripples of water, or whatever it be. You have this. And here is Pisces, and here's Aquarius. This is your ultimate cosmic type of thing, okay? Okay, then you come down here, and you have winter to spring, okay? Okay, then you come down here, and what do you have? Exactly what you were talking about a minute ago. You have the spiritual or the religious Passover. You have the Egypt to the Promised Land, okay? Now you have here, it's yourself, and you're going from the left side to the right side, but it's all the same. See, everything is the same. It doesn't make any difference. The movement from the left side to the right side is Pisces to Aquarius. The movement from Egypt to the Promised Land is winter to spring, Pisces to Aquarius. It's all of the same thing. Okay, all basically the same thing. Now, when when the people of the ancient times talked about the Passover, the Aquarius, they prophesied that Aquarius brings this point of oneness. Okay, oneness. Now, it is Jesus who said, when you see the man with the pitcher of water, enter into the house, go to the upper room, I will meet you there. Okay, so we're arriving at the conclusion that that's talking about Aquarius. And the reason that we are saying that, and with some degree of authority, is because we are looking and we are living in the time of Aquarius now, and we're seeing these things happen. We're seeing the fulfillment of these things that were prophesied, okay? So you have to at some point say, hey, it does look like this is the time and this is the point that he prophesied. Now, another point here is that the same Jesus who talked of Aquarius and who talked of the pitcher of water and all this makes a statement. And this is what I want you to look at, page 883 in those little Bibles, John chapter 17 in the Bible. In John chapter 17, Jesus makes a statement that I think would go hand in hand with Aquarius and kind of backs up the statement of the Kabbalah. In John chapter 17, if you look at verse 21, Jesus says, well, verse 20, neither I pray thee for these alone, but for them which shall believe on me through their word, that they all may be one. And so here then, Jesus is praying for this exact same thing. And this is what scares the dickens out of religious people. They talk about a one world government, a one world religion. They don't want a one religion, say. Nobody wants one religion. This basically is the essence of my feeling, that we would hold hands with everybody, Iraqis, Iranians, Africans, without regard to any of this, without regard to saying, we're saved. But religion says, no, we can't do that because we're saved and they're the unsaved and all of this horror. So here, then this is frightening to them because it means that they'd have to give up their tradition. But this is what Jesus prayed for. He prayed that everyone would be one. And what did he say was his philosophy? He didn't say to be a Christian, that they'd all be Christians. He didn't say that they'd all be Jews. He said they'd all be one, meaning that they would all understand and accept what he was talking about of the kingdom that was within. The kingdom of peace, the kingdom of love, the kingdom of individuality, that oneness of understanding God's essence within us, inside of ourselves. So the end to religion and its separation of people, the Aquarian mind, a universal essence within all of one God, all of one mind, and that's what this is talked about. Now, Aquarius is closely associated in metaphysical terms with the coming of the Messiah. The coming of the Messiah. And Jesus Christ makes a very important statement in John 14, I believe it is John 14:12. I didn't write that page down, but whatever. In John 14:20, he says, at that day you shall know I am in my Father, you in me, and I in you. John 14, verse 20. So Jesus says the Messiah comes inside of people, in you. And now you can see the Messiah all over the place. It doesn't make any difference what religion a person is. A person says they feel something within them. You see Chinese people practicing Tai Chi, some force is within them. You hear of people who are in, all of a sudden they're sitting on a floor and they're having these meditation. People who would never dream of doing anything like that in the past. And they're saying they're finding something within them. That's the coming of the Messiah. That's the Messiah coming in the Aquarian age. And Jesus, who represents the Christ, or Jehoshua, who represents the Christ, says, it's in you. At that day you will know. Well, that's what you feel. You sit on the floor here, you go home, or whatever it is, and you start to feel this energy within yourself. The Messiah is universal freedom, and that's the essence of Aquarius. Universal freedom. Not to be lumped with a group or an organization, but to be free. To be free to follow your star. To think the way that you wish to think, to associate with the people you wish to associate, to consult and to consent within groups or within people, whomever, that you wish, without somebody saying it's wrong because we don't approve of you or what you're doing because we don't like it. It's nobody's business. So then we start to see what is obvious. Something is obviously going on. So when we say, behold what is obvious, something is obviously going on. Can you see the changes? Can you look around and see the obsession with things psychic? Have you ever seen in your life so much stuff on television about things psychic? I mean, people would die years ago discussing things, and nowadays it's Bill, whether it's Bill Moyers or Joseph Campbell or In Search Of, or all of these programs on television, all strange types of things happening. Because it's an obsession that happens with things psychic during the Aquarian age, because it's a time of new consciousness. So, in spite of the fact that religion is so against this thing, we have to look to the stars. We have to look to the precepts of nature. And the Bible itself explains that that's what we should do. For some strange reason, in such a scientifically astute world that we live in and nation that we live in, we've turned our back on the amazing revelations of nature. We were talking, and I'll be getting this into the study we're doing on homosexuality. We were talking a little while ago, before I started this, I was watching a program called The Nature of Sex on public television. And and sometimes when you make judgments about people are homosexual or whatever they are, and this program opened my eyes. Nature does not follow the social mores that we set up. We were watching these groups of lizards in this remote place somewhere, and in this whole group of lizards, this species of lizards, there are no males. They're all female. And the female lizards come together, have sex, and one gets pregnant. Figure this one out. There is no males in the whole species. Is this wild? But it's true. And I says to Joan, wait a minute. How could this be? It can't be, but it is. See? Because nature does not accept the social mores that we accept. So we say, oh, you can't have homosexuality and so. Well, what is that? What is that? The better one, I'm going to tell you this, I was just shocked you a little bit, it's not on you, but they had barnacles. You ever see barnacles? Barnacles attach themselves to things, and you maybe get hundreds of barnacles, and they're all attached, and each barnacle is male and female. This is wild. You have to see this program. Each barnacle is male and female, and what happens then, a barnacle will send out a long penis looking to see what the barnacle next door is, either male or female today, and if it's female, bingo. But this same barnacle that sends out the penis could the next time receive one from the other barnacle, so they're all male and female. It doesn't make any difference. See? But yet we say, you couldn't even discuss these things. Could you imagine discussing even that, which is an absolute scientific thing of nature? You couldn't discuss that. See? Because we're not allowed to think. And so what do? We have a minister stand in front of nature. And here the Apostle Paul says, the things which are unseen are made clear by the things which are seen. So that's why God says in the Bible, it's somewhere, I think it's in Isaiah, my thoughts are not like your thoughts, my ways are not like your ways. But we have studied Bibles, we've studied books, we've sung songs, we've listened to these bizarre preachers, and we've turned our back on nature. So all of the things that are actually ordained by this Creator, we look upon as evil or bizarre. The only thing that is evil and bizarre is obviously the culture that we've developed. Well, because someone says it's the Word of God, we disregard the proofs of nature, and we follow the fables of the Bible, and that's what it is. We were just talking about one a few moments ago. That becomes, that is an absolute holy thing to so many, but it's a fable. Jesus' crucifixion, how can you even question such a thing? You have to. You have to, because I've sat many times with God and I said, if you did this to this man, what's wrong with your head? You are as sick as the people down there doing it, because it's your idea and they're doing your will. Until I found out in that question of human sacrifice, like I said a little this morning, I found out that David looked at animal sacrifice and said, that's not what you intended. My ears and eyes have been opened. So our ears and eyes have to be open to what is the truth. And then we learn to love the Jeheshua who explained. Do you know what Jesus did? Do you know what Jeheshua, the voice of Jeheshua, whoever the man was, his name wasn't Jesus, his name was Jeheshua, whoever he was, whatever he was, he did everything within his being to explain to you that you are a special, special person, that the kingdom of God is located within you. You're the light of the world. You can do everything as good or better than he did. And we've ignored it because we needed to make a hero. So we put him on a pedestal where he didn't want to be. And we made a hero out of him. And then we decreed that this God somewhere wouldn't be satisfied and forgive us all unless he tortured this young, wonderful person to death. And we all bought it. But you see, the problem is this. If we bought that, remember something else. We also bought Easter, which was completely made up. It was a make-believe holiday that religion made up out of the blue, and we bought it. So if you can't trust that, how can you trust crucifixion or anything else? Until you understand it as a spiritual aspect of your own business, your own life. So you have your Bible, you have your religion. Let me ask you a question. Even the people sitting here, do you need a Bible to show a caterpillar change into a butterfly? Do you? Is it in the Bible? Do you need a Bible? No, you don't. Instead of trying to find out why there are Buddhists and why there are Catholics and why there are Baptists and who's saved and who's not saved, why don't you try to find out why the caterpillar changes into a butterfly? If you find out why the caterpillar changes into a butterfly, you will have a mystical and spiritual experience. You're wasting your time trying to find out which religion is right. Try to find out what truth is. And this is given to you to see and to be part of. What is nature saying? What is God saying? It says in Psalm 19:1, well, let me read it because we're going anyhow. Psalm 19:1, it's on page 471 for the crowd that's here. Psalm 19:1, let me read it. This is great. The heavens declare the glory of God, the firmament shows his handiwork. Day unto day utters speech, and night unto night shows knowledge. Did you see what it says? Do you know what that means? Nature. Nature. That's all. Nature. There is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard. Whose voice? Nature's voice. Their line has gone out through all the earth, their words to the end of the world. In them has he set a tabernacle for the sun, not S-O-N, S-U-N, the sun in the sky, which is as a bridegroom coming out of his chamber, rejoicing as a strong man to run a race. His going forth is from the end of the heaven, and his circuit unto the ends of it, and there is nothing hid from the heat thereof. It's all talking about the universe, the cosmos, the heat, the electricity, the energy of the sun and the universe. We have to close the books. You have to close the Bible. You have to take all of those stained glass windows in your church and replace them with pure glass so you can see what the heck's going on. And you have to close the thoughts and open your mind to the universal God. And when we agree to a harmony with nature, then we tune to the cycles and the rhythms of the universe that will give us truth. Finis! Thank you very much for sharing this time. Thank you.